In this podcast, David Price had a comment that stopped me in my tracks. He said, "Your best thinking got you here." Wow, think about that for a moment. Your best thinking got you here. If your life isn't quote unquote perfect, and whose is, what do you need to change? Let's find out. David, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And man, tell me my story. When you say it, makes me have like flashbacks I'm going through. Just different parts of my life. But in short, right, so we're not here for the next 8 hours. Real simply, I grew up or I was born to drug addicted 18-year-old parents that really didn't have life too figured out and didn't have a stable home, and that's how I started came into this world and went through that for the majority of my life. I think finally my mom got clean. My parents divorced before I remember. My mom got clean um, when I was in middle school, so that's the first time I like really had a stable home. I lived in about 20 places before that, including homeless shelters, hotels, and you name it. And you know, like I said, in middle school, we stayed in the same home. I think from middle school to high school, two or three different homes, and then I ended up developing a drug problem of my own. And you would think that, going through all that and drugs bad. And I did. I did know drugs were bad and stayed with them for a long time. And then good friend said, "Hey, man, you really, really, really should try this." And it seemed really convincing at the time. And as soon as I did, and it was off to the races. And struggled with drugs for about 20 years of my life, on and off, and joined the army and did different things to try to get off them and stop using them. I just didn't really understand what it took, and was trying to do it myself in my way. And finally, in 2013 ended up in a 12-step program, went there as a supporter to really help somebody else, and started crying myself. And at that point I really, I didn't know why I was crying at the time. I believe it was definitely God letting me know I was in the right place and opening me up so I could listen, and not be there as a supporter but be there for myself at that point, and followed their suggestions. And that was 2013 was the last time. July 12th of 2013 was the last time I drank or used any kind of substance. And later on became an entrepreneur and got my insurance license in 2018, and built a large virtual agency where I help other people build virtual agencies, and live a life of freedom now. And things are completely different. And as I say that, I think in my head, and I was like, man, I really lived multiple lives, and super blessed with that. And to me, it really helps me reach more people and help more people, because there's so many people that are struggling with different things in their lives. And a lot of the times I could relate with that, and let them know I've been there, been bankrupt, homeless, carless, and was able to get through all those things, and now have a wonderful, beautiful life because I didn't give up.
Is there any benefit to surviving that kind of chaos?
Yeah, so the first thing is you tell yourself, man, like I wish I didn't go through all that, right? I wish that I made smarter decisions when I was a child and teenager, or even young adult, right? I didn't get clean until I was in my 30s. So by then you should really I know a lot of times people may experiment in their teenage years and early 20s, but you figure by your 30s, man, you're getting a little old for that. But then I also got to think that, going through all that was necessary for me to become the person I am today. And the reason I say that is the reason I use for almost 20 years of my life is because for most of it, I was in control, or I felt in control, and everything looked normal from the outside. And, I held good jobs and drove nice cars and dressed nice and had, nice furnished. My house was nicely furnished, and all those things. So I was able to hold it together for so long. And when you could hold it together for so long, like you don't think you have a problem. And when everything finally falls apart, and you finally realize, man, I'm doing this all wrong, and you realize you have a problem, well, that's your first opportunity to receive help. And it's a lot of times people are struggling with addiction, or somebody knows someone that's struggling with addiction, and they come to me for advice, and they want to help them. And the first thing I help them is like enable them, and like, give them a place to stay, give them some money, give them this. I'm like, honestly, I was like, from my experience, and they need to like really really hit rock bottom, and then people talk about, well, what is rock bottom? And a lot of times people will look at rock bottom as if it's the material things, right? No money, no home, and all that stuff. But really, what I've learned is rock bottom is when you have no real relationships anymore, you know, and that's when you finally reach a point of desperation where you're finally willing to accept help. And that's where I had to get to, because before that I would do everything on my own. And then once I was finally able to receive help, then you start learning a little bit more about self-evaluation. You start learning about your ego, and you start learning about these different things. And then now, like, I ask for help all the time. I had something I couldn't figure out yesterday. Like, I call someone more successful than me, or someone that has experience with that, and ask for help. So that, if I never struggle with drugs and never hit that spot, I don't think I would ever be in a place to receive the kind of help that you need to be successful in other aspects of your life.
That's a really deep observation. You said you were doing it all wrong. Obviously, trying to do everything solo may be a component of that. What else goes into doing it all wrong?
Yeah, it's so easy. Um, when you're having success, and things are going right, and you get the other on the other side of it, to like look back and evaluate, like, all right, what happened? How did I get here? Right? Like they say, what foresight's 2020. And there was a lot of times in my life where I lost, a really, really good job because I was just at work too messed up. And when that happened, it's like, all right, well, I got to fix this. So I would just like lay on the couch for like a week and like detox and like go through it, and like everything that comes along with that. It's just absolutely horrible. Where like most people would just like go to rehab, like, and like knowing what I know now, I'm like, geez, why the heck did I just go to rehab? Why did I just ask for help? Why didn't I just like every time I just always wanted to figure out something myself. And it was everything. Like, I start a business, like, let me just figure this out by myself, or let me go to Barnes and Noble and buy a book on this, and there's so many resources. There's so many people that are so good at different things, whether it's staying clean, whether it's getting healthy, whether it's, starting a business, writing a book, whatever it is. There's so many resources of things that help you. And like majority of my life, I've just always tried to figure things out myself. And, something that I learned early on in a 12-step meeting, actually. And it was like, your best thinking got you here. And I was
Oh,
like, oh,
that's
wow.
good.
Like that totally hit me. Yeah, it's like, wow, and you could use that with like anything. Like if you're, if I'll talk about me, right? But like if I'm not happy, in the location I'm living, or if I'm not happy with my income level, or if I'm not happy with, how I feel inside, it's like, well, my best thinking got me here. Like, so why am I going to try to figure out how to fix that? Like I need to go let somebody think for me, let somebody like help me out. That maybe, let's say, my I'm not happy with my finances. Well, let me find someone that is good with their finances, and have them coach me on what to do next. So just really open my mind to, just doing things a completely different way. Asking for help is actually okay. Oh, people that are typically successful at things, like that's usually how they got there.
What was the hardest thing about asking for help?
I guess the hardest thing, when I wasn't asking, I mean, now it's not hard for at all. Like now it's just normal. Like it's like, why wouldn't I ask for help? Like what's wrong with asking for help? But when I wasn't doing it, the hardest thing was, just it wasn't that it was hard to ask for help. It was just I really thought I could figure it out myself. I really thought I had things under control, right? And would even like going back to like drug abuse, even the people I used with and the people around me, they just felt like I had them fooled, thinking I got this under control and stuff like that. I willpower out of this, and it's the ego. That's what it is. It's the ego. A lot of times people talk about ego and they say ego is thinking about like, oh, I'm better than you. And like when I think about ego, like I don't think that. I think like ego means like I got this. Like I can't learn anything from you. Like you can't tell me anything. Ego is just blocking you from, ego is basically to me is like when you have a cup full and you can't put anything else in it. Like that's what ego is to me when I look at ego and when you learn how to like dump that cup out and receive everything else changes, right? Because now you actually have a chance to put something new in it.
You bring up control. I find control to be a fascinating topic. Everybody searches for control, and yet the more controlling you get, the more it controls you, and the less you ultimately control. It's kind of like chasing your tail. Um, Talk about control a little bit in your life and some of the things that you see in control now from where you are.
Yeah. So, I mean, control is an interesting thing. I run a business. I have hundreds of insurance agents and all different personalities. And, um, you know, I've been successful in the industry. So, like, I feel like I could help people be successful. And majority of people, they're not, they're not as coachable as they can be, right? Some people are more coachable than others. And for me, like, I want to see people be successful. I want to see people succeed and but I can't control them. Like I can't control them. Like I know I can't control them. Like for instance, in the mornings we have a kickoff meeting, and we have a good showing, but we're missing a lot of people. And some of our managers or leaders were like, how do we get more people on the meeting? It's just like we can't control them. Like we could do our best to make the meetings better, but like we'll never be able to control people and just realizing like the only thing that you really can control is yourself. And when you realize that, it gives you like a new freedom because I could suggest things, I could lead by example, but at the end of the day, like there's no true control over another human being, and there's no control over the world around us, right? But there is control over us. I did a little Facebook Live this morning, and I was talking about like extreme ownership, and I was talking about, basically when you realize like anything you're not happy with is your fault, like that gives you a sense of freedom because you can actually do something about it when it's you. If I'm not happy about something and I'm blaming it on you, Pat, like I'm in trouble because I can't change you, Pat. Right? I can't. So like when I realize it's me, then I have a chance because I do have a chance to change myself. And once you start looking at things differently like that, or for me, like that's when things really start changing is, control what I can control.
Oh, I'm totally with you there. As a matter of fact, I think meditation's been key in terms of leading me there because it gives me this pause in a situation where I can just watch and observe. And that gives me that moment to choose how do I react. And how you react sometimes is everything in a situation.
Yeah, and sometimes sometimes not everything needs a reaction too is something
Yes.
I learned. I got to teach people that all the time. That the like I said, I'm always mentoring people, and they'll come to me with problems, or they're trying to mentor somebody. It might be like one of my coaches, and yeah, it's just like no, like probably the answer is probably to do nothing right now. And it's so funny because a lot of times they're like all emotional and they want to do something, and when they want to control the situation, they want to do something. I was like, let's just not do anything and see what happens. And a lot of times, majority of the time, the situation fixes itself. I remember, I think it was just yesterday, one of my managers was like, yeah, this one agent, they don't want to jump in our virtual office anymore. They don't want to work there anymore. They don't want to do this. I was like, you're saying all this that they don't want to do, but like I see them in the virtual office. So for me, like what somebody says doesn't mean as much to me as what I actually see and what they're doing, right? And they looked at and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're right, you know? So it's like, people get emotional, people say different things, and sometimes you don't have to react to it and let the universe handle it.
You were talking about being in that 12-step program and just having a higher power speak to you. What did they say?
I don't know if I mean, it wasn't like I heard words, but
Yeah.
like to me, God, higher power, whatever, everyone has different words for what they believe, but for me, the communication was emotion. I went to this 12-step program. It took a taxi. Well, first off, I was dating a girl and she kept stealing from my family. I was like,
Hmm.
listen, you got to go. Like I can't have you stealing from my family. Like, I used for a long time, but I wasn't the kind of person I was stealing from people, and nothing's okay with that ever. And I'm like, well, maybe those people at the 12-step program could help you, because she's like, I'll do whatever I can, like, whatever, like, trying to salvage the broken, toxic relationship we were in at the time. And so I was like, well, maybe those people at the 12-step meeting can help me. And she's like, what did she say? She said, well, some of them are closed. They won't let you in if you're not an addict or whatever. I'm like, don't worry, they're gonna let me in. I promise. I got my tickets, so they're gonna let me in. And we took a taxi there. So in my head, like I'm going there to help somebody else. Like in my head, like my life's fine, even though I'm in my 30s. I don't even own a car. I'm sleeping on my grandma's pull-out couch. Like my whole life, like on the outside, looks really, really bad. Matter of fact, it actually looked better on the outside, a few years prior, when I wasn't, when I was doing way worse, spiritually and emotionally. And so I'm sitting in this meeting as a supporter, hoping that this helps her. And that's when I started feeling the emotions and started crying. And that's when I started realizing, I'm like, let me listen. And I didn't know what, like I said, I didn't know what was going on there, but after God showed up, or my higher power showed up in my life like so many times after that, and just like really opened up so many doors for me to get from there in 2013, where I was negative net worth, to where I'm at now. um it's really, really amazing. So like now it's like easy to look back and be like, oh yeah, that was definitely God. That was definitely God speaking to me to like make me, because once that happened, they had a suggestion of go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I'm like, well, that sounds good. Let's do that. And even in my head at that time, I'm like, let me, maybe if she does that, she'll be good. Like, let me do it to like prove to her like it could be done, kind of a deal. Like, it was still, operating on ego at that moment, but like it was like I heard everything I needed to hear to get to that next level, that next step, to hear the next thing that I need to do, and throughout my life, it was like, one door open, went through that door, and I didn't know where the next door was until I went through the door. And so many people, they get so caught up with like, hey, I'm trying to get to Y. I'm like, all right, cool, but like complete B. Like complete B first. Yeah, but I want to go to Y. Be like, yes, Y is there, but you can't go to Y until you go through B,
Oh,
and
life is
and
a
people,
series of baby steps.
yes, 100%.
So do you have a strong, is spirituality a strong part of your world now?
I don't speak about it a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, speaking of probably a little bit more on this podcast than I would, because, just the conversation we're having, but my decision making, I believe, is very spiritual. And when I say that, I act in faith quite a bit. I've made a drastic decision. I was working with one insurance carrier in 20, well, I got my license. I started with them in 2018, and they just really started treating agents bad, started treating me bad. And I'm making $100,000 a month from them, right? Like life's good, like it's passive income and everything's good, but like it just didn't feel right anymore. And in 2023, last year, I decided, I was going to start working with some other insurance carriers as well. And contractually, that shouldn't have been an issue at all. But the person that owns that company, I knew that they were going to have an issue, and they canceled my contract. So I went from making six figures monthly to my income stopping, like in a text message, basically. And and I knew that was going to happen, right? But like that to me, like that was just me acting in faith. Be like, all right, cool. As long as I do the right thing and do it for the right reasons, everything's going to work out. And actually, 3 days from now will be 1 year, and I'm right back where I was. And I was able to do that in 1 year, which is really really great numbers, like really, really amazing. And it wasn't easy and it took a lot of work. And the first month I was like, oh my goodness, this is a long road up we're about to go. Cause I went from doing, $1.5 million a month in sales to November, which was our first full month. We did $282,000 in sales. So it was like, oh wow, that used to be like a bad week for me. So it was a long road for sure. But just like I thought, anytime I make a decision based off of um, you know, faith and not fear, things just always worked out. I had a construction company and I brought a business partner in, and this was after I was clean. And I made a mistake of bringing him on a 50-50 partner, and he actually started using with our employees,
Mm.
and we're having a ton of success. And I was just like, dude, like I can't ask him to leave. He's not gonna let me buy him. Like I had no control of the situation, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna walk. And I just walked. The business was paying for my apartment, paying for my truck. I mean, everything was great at that time. It was the most successful I've ever been. And I literally just went to the license department, just took my name off the license with no real plan. And again, as soon as that happened, doors just kept opening up for me and having more and more success. So, a lot of times people talk about God and spiritual and this and that. But I watch them make decisions based off fear and let fear stop them from doing the things they know they should do. And to me, like that when you really want to talk about being spiritual, it's having the faith to make decisions that seem crazy to the whole rest of the world, because everyone thought I was nuts, and the owner of that company never thought I would do what I did because I was the number one earner in that company. But it sure worked out for the better.
That's a really good story because I think this is going to be a little woo, bear with me. But I think there's a lot to be said about the sort of energy you work in and the energy you put out there. And if you put out a positive energy, one of trust, one of honesty, and you do the baby steps, things seem to move in your direction. It's when you're on the dark side of that equation that things just get worse and worse.
100%. The motives, like you have to look at your motives,
Yeah.
and if your motives aren't pure motives, like why do you expect things to go well for you? And when you're doing things or you're just trying to be a taker all the time and you're trying to leverage and get more than you give, and then your world starts falling apart. Like why would you be surprised? And the majority of my life, when I was using and stuff, I was always trying to have the leverage. I was always trying to receive more and negotiate and stuff. And now I try to provide more value and try to help people without expecting things, and try to make sure like the relationships and friendships that I have, that I'm not taking more than I'm giving. And when I start practicing that, then all of a sudden you start receiving more. So it's definitely and it takes time, right? It takes time to see it because you got to do it on faith at first. But and a lot of times you got to be consistent as well. Don't go donate $100 to somebody's college fund and expect to see a return right away, right? But like when you start practicing and being that person, things will tend to get better eventually.
It's a totally different paradigm from the sort of materialistic get ahead at any cost society we sometimes find ourselves in. But I think it's a much more powerful paradigm, a much more powerful set of rules. One of my guests, Mary Neal, who she was a surgeon, she's retired now. She ran the spine unit at, I think it was UCLA or USC, I think it was. At any rate, she had a near-death experience. And one of the things she says out of that experience is she went from hope to trust on a spiritual basis. And I often think about that statement because it is so profound. The idea of, do you live in hope or do you live in trust? When you live in trust, it is a very different paradigm.
Yeah, yeah. I actually explain that to people like the difference, and just to kind of break that down a little further. It's like when you hope something's gonna happen, it's like you hope, like you don't know, like you hope you don't know, and when you trust, it's like it's set, it's gonna happen. But yeah, it definitely and it's nice when you walk around in that trust, and it doesn't make you a robot and doesn't put doubt. There's definitely doubts throughout my journey and the things I've done and stuff, but a lot of times it's for instance, that big decision that I told you that I had to make, where I figured they're going to cut my income and my lifestyle is going to change and everything else is going to change. Of course there were some doubts that I may be able to do it again or get back to where I was, or the whole world wasn't going to fall and I fall down and me end up bankrupt again. But then it's like you're thinking about like, all right, cool. Or do I just put up with it for the next 10 years? Like I start thinking in like blocks of time. A lot of times people are so caught up in like today or this week, but like, if you're not happy with your situation, it's like, all right, cool. Like, are you just going to do that for the next 10, 20 years? And that's what I had to like really ask myself. Like, no, I don't want to, I'd rather start all over and like all these things have to go through than have to deal with this for, another 10 or 20 years of my life.
Well, that goes to change. People do not want to change. They will stay in an absolutely awful situation rather than risk change. And that's one I don't get because, sure, I like comfort like anybody else, but I have made choices that have thrown my world up in the air and reassembled everything. And those were great choices, frankly. What is it about change that people fear so much?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. People definitely fear change. And, I think it's a mixture of they rationalize their situation. So for example, I think I was in my 20s and had a job offer for at the time was $70,000 a year, which to me was the most money I'm gonna make. It was a salary, plus like a car allowance, 401k, managing people, and I'm like, man, I have my dream job, and like you rationalize like this is the dream job, but like it wasn't my dream job. It wasn't really like if you like go back, like let's go back to when you're a teenager, right? And what was your dream job when you were a teenager? What did you really want your life to look like? Like, before life beat you up, before all these things happened, before you got told no, before all those things, like what did you really want? And that's not what I really really wanted, right? I wanted something different and more than that. But we tend to like just like rationalize and like tell ourselves, I'm happy, this is where I want to be, like I like the people I work with, and we start like building this story that's not even true. So of course we don't want to change because in our head we just rationalize that we're cool with the situation. A big one is like like battered wife syndrome, where it's like they just you know, not to get into such a controversial topic, but like, they just, oh, he's a nice guy. It's okay. He doesn't do it all the time, and it's the same thing with life. It's like battered life syndrome. It's like, oh, it's going to be fine, and we're not here that long. And, there's so many amazing things we could do and experiences we can have. And it's like you're just giving all that up for like something like you're not really thrilled about, and I think it's just not really it's not taking chances. It's not really again, as I'm saying this, I'm like, this is why my life had to fall apart. Because if it didn't, I'd still be working that $70,000 a year a job, thinking, life's great. I might be at $75,000 a year now, living in New Jersey, like dead broke, right? And it's like, yeah, it's like that's again, I feel like everything I went through was a God thing, to help me get to this spot where I'm at now, because um things have to start breaking before you start making changes.
If looking back on it all, if you could give people, say, three pieces of wisdom, what would you say to them?
three pieces of wisdom. So the first one would be like learn to self-evaluate. Um, I do this in every aspect of my life, right? Every aspect. I'm always trying to figure out what I'm doing and how I can do it better. And I do that with my health. I mean, I do that with, what I eat. I do that with how I sleep. I do that with, relationships, with trying to be a better son to my mother, my business, trying to be a better mentor, coach, and it's like you can't improve if you don't self-evaluate with what's going on with you right now. The other one is like be open-minded to change. There's a saying that I like, and it's like everything is subject to revision, especially what you think you know of the truth. And to me, that was like such a profound thing because we could sit there and be like, this is so true to us right now. And no one could argue with you. And it's the truth. But then you get a new piece of information. You're like, man, I was wrong. And if you could walk around and realize, like, I might be wrong about this, I might be wrong about that. I don't know, who am I, right? It definitely opens up your mind to realizing you're wrong and seeing where you can improve in other places. And then the last one is like being okay with asking for help. You know, Not just being okay with asking for help, but like to me, like asking for help is it's a life hack. It's the easiest thing in the world, and now when I say that, like make sure you're asking the right people for help. So, I have different people in my life, if I'm having some issues spiritually and I feel like I need some help with that, I have the person I ask for help, and or advice from. And then the other second part to that is like be ready to receive the advice. Like don't ask advice if you're not going to take it. Real estate, I own some real estate, and when I need some questions on how I should handle some of the real estate, I have a person I call for that. And when they give me advice, like whether I want to do it or not, I just do it because why else did I ask for advice, right? I'm looking for something. So, definitely find the mentors in your life that can help you with the different things and make sure they're having success in that issue, right? Don't ask for, relationship advice, if you're married from somebody that's not married. Make sure you're finding somebody, someone that's been happily married for 60, 70 years. That'd probably be the person I would talk to.